Right across from our school is the very prestigious school Stanford, known for its research and graduate programs. It is nearly impossible to get into. But what on earth do those students who do get into do behind those arches? And what does their day-to-day life look like? I interviewed a PhD student at University of Pennsylvania, a similarly prestigious school, and he shares his experience as a PhD.
So my name is Tom Zhang. My occupation is a student, but I am a PhD student in my fourth year at the University of Pennsylvania. My program is the Computer and Information Science PhD program, but my specialization is in robotics. PhD students' main job is to do research, but for some fields, they also have quite a lot of teaching responsibilities. Like they have to be teaching assistant for some classes in their schools. But for my program, I just have to TA for two classes. So mostly it's research. We constantly think. It's very different from, say, working for an industry job. So I did work for a couple companies before my PhD program. And after work, I really just didn't think about my work anymore. But for doing a PhD, when I'm eating my breakfast and when I'm showering or when I'm walking home from work, I have to think about these problems.
Tom shares his day to day routine as a PhD student.
It's very flexible and it's very variable. So the thing is, it highly depends on if there is a deadline coming up or if there are no deadlines, right? If I'm just, doing research and thinking about things, what would happen is I wake up from 6 to 8 a.m. So it's quite a big range, right? And I check my emails, see if anything's up, and then I will read a couple papers. If there's any work left over from last night, I would do some implementation. I basically read papers and think about stuff until I have a meeting with, say, my colleagues or my advisor. Basically, like everything mixed together, like reading, thinking, and implementation. In the morning, more for reading. In the afternoon, it's more for implementation. And then from dinner to maybe 8 to or 10 p.m. It's usually when I have some free time, and then I talk to my friends. I have some fun. I do some art, and then after 10 I may work for another 2 hours. But when there's deadline, things can get very different. When there's deadline, the moment I wake up 6 a.m., I might just head to the lab and start to work on my robot. I will program my robot. I will try out my framework for the entire day, sometimes until 4 a.m. So it really depends on the time and who you're working with. Yeah.
A traditional 9 to 5 usually work for up to 40 hours, but a PhD could be a lot more.
I think between 30 to 80 hours. Yeah. So when there is deadline coming up, you literally have to work nonstop every single day to polish your work up. And after the deadline, there's usually a period of how should I say, resting time when I can just choose to take some break. And yeah, so it's highly variable. You got to choose your own schedule. Of course, if your lab has that work style. Yeah. So the pros of working as a PhD is the flexible schedule. Like I said, as I described earlier, you get to design or your own timetable. Of course, like given that your advisor allows it. And the other pro is that you really have real project ownership. And the cons, of course, we're underpaid. We're massively underpaid. There is a huge strike in California right now among all the PhD students because their salary can't even cover their rent, right? So that's a big problem. So opportunity cost is super high. If I worked for a job after my undergrad, I would make probably 3-4 times more money than I'm making as a PhD student.
Tom shares how this experience had affected his life.
It has changed me a lot. I think I've become way more patient than before, and I have become more of a first principle thinker. When I see some social issue or some other kind of issue, not just like social issue or things in the news, I tend to think about fundamentally why this is happening, and this helps me relieve a lot of the load on my mind. I don't have to hold that many things. If you look at the core of the problem, you actually get to think more clearly. And the other thing is, it really strengthened my problem formulation ability. So I think that also affected me in the ways I do things and the way I live my life. I would say it's worth it if you're fundamentally interested in exploring the unknown in a very academic setting. But if you're pragmatic and if you want to work on something that contributes more directly to real world problems, then PhD might be too far fetched for you. Me personally, I think it's worth it because it helped me to connect the dots among the knowledge and the things I have learned in my undergrad. So it's definitely worth it.
Overall, the day to day life of a PhD student can be demanding and intense, but it can also be incredibly rewarding. It provides an opportunity to make a deep dive into a specific field of study, contributing important research, and lets you work around your own schedule. But it can also be very stressful and challenging. It is still a long way until deciding to pursue a PhD or not, but you can still think about it right now. I'm Eddie Miao with InFocus. Now back to you.